This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
Write On, showcasing the work of Otago Southland writers. I'm Beverly Martens. Join me for news and interviews with local writers on the second Wednesday of every month from noon till 1 and replayed the following Sunday at 1 p.m. Write On is brought to you by the Otago Southland branch of the New Zealand Society of Authors and kindly supported by the great team at the University Bookshop.
What do you want to be when you grow up? They say you are what you read, and the University Bookshop can help you be whoever you want to be. Do you want to be an athlete? Then sit down with an inspiring sports biography. Do you fancy yourself as a detective? We have a grisly lineup of murder mysteries waiting just for you. Do you aspire to be the world's greatest chef? We have cookbooks to tantalise your taste buds. Do you want to celebrate your inner child? Play up in our fabulous children's room. The University Bookshop, helping you decide what you want to be when you grow up.
Hello, and thanks for tuning in to Write On. I'm Beverly Martens, and boy, have we got a cracker of a show for you this month. With a bit of luck and persistence, I've tracked down multi-award-winning writer, poet, essayist Tracey Slaughter for you. Now, Tracey's past accolades include winning both the Landfall New Zealand and Australian calibre essay prizes, the Bridport Prize, and very recently the Moth Short Story Prize over in the UK. And Tracey normally lives in the Waikato and teaches at the university there, but she was down here last month doing a workshop at the New Zealand Society of Authors Regional Roadshow. I wasn't able to get to her one on embodying characters, but I did go to her one on editing, and after that I just knew I had to get her on the show to expand on some of her remarkable insights that she gave during that workshop, and also just to talk all about her writing practice in general. Hello and welcome, Tracey. I'd really like to start with the incredible editing workshop you gave here in Dunedin last month as part of the NZSA Regional Roadshow, because I felt then that you really turned some of the sort of premises of conventional editing on its head during that fabulous workshop. Can you tell me why sort of talking about the way you approach editing now is important to you?
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for having me, and for being at that workshop. Yeah, I was quite struck when I was asked to do an editing workshop, and I initially thought, oh my goodness, I'm not the right person to be talking about editing, because it's actually a phase of the writing game that I struggle with and have really struggled with in the past. But in sitting down to really think through why do I struggle so much with editing, I felt like I had to do some really deep thinking with the way that editing is taught and what some of the dangers of the conventional approach might be, especially for writers who are really intensely bound up in, personal material and really exploring writing that has a deep root system in their own being. So I kind of sat down and grappled with the conventions of editing and thought about what it was that really repelled me during that stage. And it really felt to me that in the opening phase of creativity, when we're kind of urged to just, work really unconsciously to throw off all kind of critical or sensorial boundaries and just, plunge in free range and explore the piece in a very raw way. That worked for me, and I loved that phase. I was always really exhilarated and at my happiest when I'm able to just go nuts in those early free roaming phases. But when editing arrives, we're kind of taught to put our critical hats firmly back on and to be really coming from a place of rational judgment and almost a clinical kind of distance on our own work, which is often really impossible to take for many writers. And it's in that phase that I think that so many difficulties enter the frame again, because you're inviting back into the creative space sometimes your worst inner voices that are capable of kind of taking a really sensorial and punitive approach to your own work, judging it really harshly, scrutinising it with a set of really conventional eyes that start to make you think, oh, I can't possibly say that, that start to actually kind of trigger shame responses and make you start, looking at your work from a really harsh attitude.
I think that thing about shame, that really resonated with me, because I don't think anybody's ever said that out loud. I think we've all felt it, but no one's, kind of said it out loud, that whakama, that shame can be really strong. And that's when, as you say, you think it's not good enough, I'm not worthy. But you're also, I think at that point, you feel like you're crossing from the private to the public, or you're starting to, if you know what I mean. When you first write that thing, you're writing it for you, you're owning it kind of, and then once you start to edit, sometimes you feel like you're doing it for other people.
Yes, that's so true, and again, that's the difference between those first and second phases of writing. In the beginning, I'm very good at just completely evading all sense of audience, and just, the only thing that matters in that first stage is, is between me and that particular piece of work, and I block out completely any sense of there being an audience. And then editing is the stage where, yes, suddenly that sense of other gazes being on your words come back in, and I feel that it actually, if you allow that back into the ring at that stage, you are often doing a massive disservice to your work, and you're editing to all the wrong things. I still believe that the thing that should be first and foremost in the editing stage is, your own feel for this work and the needs of the piece itself on a very, personal, sensory level. Trying to keep a sense of the audience out of the arena as long as you possibly can, I think is
it's really vital.
So much better.
Yeah. And do you want to give us the lovely Stephanie Roberts quote that you came up with, or that you shared with us, at the workshop?
Oh, right. Yes. So I don't know if I've got it word for word, but it's one that's lived above my desk for quite so many years. So it's something like editing is like using your fingers to unravel the knots in the hair of someone that you love. And it was that really kind of sparked my whole approach in the editing workshop, because I was so aware of the old
adage.
The old adage that is kind of like the key slogan for the editing phase, for kill your darlings.
Exactly.
And it felt just completely the opposite to this beautiful quote, which, took such a physical approach of running your fingers through the hair of a loved one and gently untangling
and doing
knots.
It with care and doing it with love, Doing it with care, doing it with tenderness, doing with a real reverence and gratitude and appreciation for what this thing that you've created is, rather than harsh judgment, a really clinical, detached, objective gaze. So then, yes, that kind of became the kind of catchword for the workshop, and I decided that rather than kill your darlings, I wanted to encourage people to
love their orphans.
Yeah.
To choose those sentences that they had maybe cast off and abandoned, and that they did feel a sense of unease or dislike for, a sense of, it's not good enough, it needs work. But to start from a place of love and really looking at it, it's still in that very personal, connected way, and an embodied way, rather than trying to take on a critical distance, which they may never ever get from that particular slice of their work.
And if I can jump in and just give you some feedback in terms of me thinking about, because we've most of us have done writing courses, or we're still in writing groups, as I am, and most other writers I know, or you've got first early readers, that kind of thing, and you might be even charged with the responsibility of that, and that really. The things that you said in the workshop really turned me around for that, because I think that we get kind of locked into formulas of the way that creative writing should look or be structured sometimes, and it's still an early draft. Often when people are bringing work to these sort of critiquing forums, and I think that we think we're trying to be helpful, and we almost some people even get to the red pen stage of, I don't think that don't have that adjective, but it's too. It's not actually helpful, and so I now, since having done your workshop, the things that I feel like I'm going to step back from other people's work, because my goodness, it's their work, and I'm going to ask myself only kind of a couple of questions, which is this writing human, and is it alive? And maybe...
What was the second one, sorry?
Is it alive?
Right.
Does it have some kind of human emotional heart and truth to it? And does it feel alive? And then I might kind of gently point out the areas where perhaps there could be more of those two things. But that's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a really beautiful way to frame it. And I honestly feel that because I teach creative writing and I workshop work all the time, but I always put those things at the core of what it is we're searching for in somebody's work, and I always advocate starting with praise, even up at the graduate level, when people are kind of veterans of the workshop, and sometimes they actually enter with hit me hard, give it to me straight, tear it to pieces. I have met very, very few people that can actually withstand that kind of knives out, no holds barred critical workshopping. And I've seen many, many, many people who've been crushed by that kind of attitude as well. Not that it's ever existed in my workshops, but people sometimes arrive in my workshops having been wounded elsewhere, and actually had their voices really shut down in a painful way that has stunted their development completely, and they had quite deep-seated impacts on them as people as well. So for me, those questions, is this work human and is it alive? Am I really feeling this work? Is the writer getting in touch fully with their voice and all its, human qualities that only their voice possesses? Those are the questions that are right at the heart. And I think creativity, can only thrive in a space of full permission and encouragement and support. And so that being the first thing that we try and nurture within the group, and a sense of kind of really befriending each other's work and, treating it with the same human way that we would each other. Nobody wants to kind of confront somebody and, get an initial kind of response of just radical criticism and attack going on. And I think the work is so attached to us, we have to treat it the same way.
Yeah.
And I believe that even in a piece which is in kind of turmoil, that's very early in draft stages, it is about looking for where the heat and the energy and the pulse.
That's another great word,
that
heat.
real,
heat and pulse.
That real human heartbeat it's always there, I believe, and it's about identifying that and saying, this is where I feel it. Can I have more of this? Yeah. Not attacking the things that you feel might be detracting.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to give you another quote now from Jean Lucas. I hope I'm saying that right. He was a contemporary. He's a French ceramic artist who was a contemporary of Picasso. And this is, I think, something else that we should all remember when we are perhaps, being in terms of being kind to ourselves with our own editing, but also, if you're editing in a workshop, is that he said a work of art is an assemblage of scars. Now, do you agree with that, Tracey?
I love that. Oh my God, yes, I absolutely do. I mean, I think this is why I've struggled so much with the editing phase is because, my writing does come from a place of, really intensely felt and personal places, like even when it's fiction, even when it's projected out and kind of submitted to that, transformational fictive process, it's often usually drawing on something incredibly, inner and personal. So, I mean, there's a quote, and I'm forgetting who it's by actually, but with my burned hands, I write about the fire.
Right.
And I think so many people are in that space, that they're trying with their writing to make sense of experiences which, are intense and, have kind of unsettled and haunted and stayed with them for a lifetime. So to bring that work forward and share it is a huge thing, and it needs a very, very human response first, before it can be taken to pieces in a really critical way.
Because talking about with the burnt hands, I mean, that's really showing cause and effect, isn't it? And I think a great short story does that. It doesn't do it in a straightforward way, and that's what I love about your work, is that you might set up a situation that's seemingly quite benign, and be it domestic or commercial, and obviously your example of the your recent win in the Calibre Prize of why your hair is long and your story's short, which was literally written in snippets and was ostensibly about a hair salon, but it's so much more than that. And I think that's one of your absolute skills, Tracey, is that you might start in on a story where it'll have an arresting start, but you kind of lulled almost, not the false sense of security, but you sort of lull people in, don't you? And then whammo. But you don't do it with a sledgehammer. These are they're sort of sometimes death by a thousand cuts, really. Why do you kind of, what's led you to write like that?
Oh, I don't honestly know. I'm not very good at analysing my own process, but that particular piece was a good example of what the kind of conventional editing process can kill, because that piece sat in the dark for quite some time, because I started it and then I subjected it to that shocking gaze of judgment, and I went, oh, that's not good enough, that's not working, and I abandoned it. And then I went back to it and I tried to salvage it, and then, in editing once again, I was like, no, it's not worthy, and cast it away. And then finally I just could not leave the story alone. It had been, it's one of those ones that had kind of been waiting a lifetime to try and make sense of. And
Can you
so I
actually
went
remember
back to
the
it
time frame of the sort of the woe to go, the thing when you first started kind of working on it through to submitting it for the competition?
The actual story itself, I had been wanting to tell for a while. It would be a number of years, and I had a couple of runs at it, and just didn't feel that it was working. Something was missing, and then I started again in that very fast, fragmented form, and it was that
Unlocked
started to unlock things. Yeah. And then of course I started to judge the form itself and went, oh no one's going to, want to read a million little snippets like that. So yeah, cast it off for formal reasons. And then, but then once I just kind of got over myself and embraced it, and ran with the form, I was in. But right down to the wire, I nearly didn't send that piece away because I put it together and I looked at it and went, oh no, that doesn't really qualify as an essay. It's a weird kind of hybrid thing. It's too poetic and it's too impressionistic, and it won't be taken seriously as an essay. So I again, if I hadn't thrust that kind of critical voice into the off to the side and just done it, it would have never had a hope of winning the prize.
What a very heartening thing for, I think, listeners to hear, really, is never give up, and don't be bound by kind of, conventional formatting, because I, recently, a few months ago, I read Coco Solid's book, which is How to Start a Turf War. And that's, set in South Auckland, and that is vignettes all the way through. It's quite filmic. And there's gaps and there's jumps and there's little, kind of a scene here and a scene there. And you get it. You totally get it. And it doesn't look like a conventional novel.
That's on my summer reading list. I haven't read it yet, unfortunately, but it's one of those ones that I'm like, yeah, I'm going to sink my teeth into that. Yeah, can't wait.
Yeah, and it's just about moving, moving things forward, isn't it? Like moving the form forward. So it is about taking risks, and obviously when you do take those risks, you've been well rewarded in terms of some of the fantastic prizes that you've collected over the years and are continuing to do. I mean, you certainly. This year's been a great year for you, hasn't it? And getting two good awards and recognition under your belt. Now, what I want to switch to now, though, is how you manage that in terms of the fact. I mean, you teach creative writing at Waikato University. You edit 2 journals, Mayhem and Poetry Aotearoa. How do you fit your writing in?
By living in perpetual chaos and surrendering to it. Unfortunately, I really wish I could hand out a nice, tidy formula for managing anything at all, but management is not my strong suit. And I can't say I've got any kind of balance going on. It's generally pretty hectic.
You mean domestically? You mean like the housework's gone?
Yeah, no. I used to have a sign on my fridge that said, if the house is clean, you're ignoring the movement. It was an old feminist slogan, and I kind of changed it to, if the house is clean, you're ignoring your writing. So, yeah, no, that definitely comes bottom of the pile. But the trouble can be, actually for me, is that my own writing ends up at the bottom of the heap, and I sometimes do get into
because of your academic work.
Phases. Yeah, because I'm teaching so hard and doing other editing that sometimes I have to go for long stretches where I'm not getting to my own writing. So I'm looking forward right now to diving into a summer of some sustained writing of my own. It definitely bubbles up and sometimes bursts through, but it's only able to burst through in very, very short windows. So
you're not able to take sabbaticals per se. You really have to just kind of work it in with the academic calendar of when you get breaks in that.
I'm crossing my fingers for a sabbatical at the beginning of next year. That would be, really bliss and definitely keep me going, because I've got so much, especially after these, amazing wins, which have really given me impetus and a real sense of confirmation that the different directions I've been going in are working, are being well received. So that's been really heartening. And
is it time to put writer on your passport?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be honest, that would be the dream. If there was a way, to kind of make the world work where I was writing full time, I would be there with bells on. It's the old struggle of keeping the wolf from the door.
Yeah, of
but
course.
But I'm very ready now. I feel like at my age too, I really would love to be writing full time. As much as I love teaching, I love connecting with other writers, and I really am hugely inspired by seeing the breakthroughs that I do in my students. People finding their voices is always like a real honour and a thrill to be around. But yes, I would love to be a full-time writer at this point.
Now, how do you, because you do write things that are very personal, and a lot of it, there's a sort of seething underbelly of situations, and certainly some of them I could really relate to. I'm a little bit older than you, but I grew up in a small town, and there was this sort of, the rugby club dominance and things like that, and you kind of go into those areas where the so-called heroes are not so much, and the sort of male gaze and things like that, and it is raw, it is edgy, and it's not pretty. Some of it, what happens to women in a lot of your stories is it's the truth, but it's not a truth that sometimes that it makes people uncomfortable. What I kind of want to know is, how do you decompress from that? Like, how do you get out of that space when you're so deep in it writing? How do you sort of come back to the real? Not the real world. That's insulting to say that, because it is part of the real world, but. How do you get yourself back out of there and grounded?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I think in the beginning I wasn't really aware of maybe the need to kind of come back out and ground myself again. In some ways, my writing I've always seen as part of my survival system. It is part of the way that I try and deal with the impact of that world and the overexposure to some of its harsher angles. And so I've often felt that rather than the process of looking at it and writing it being damaging or overloading, that it's actually part of the healing process. And I still find that even though, yes, there are difficulties in going back to especially really kind of tough personal experiences, that the words themselves are part of finding hope. Language itself, for me, the mere fact that we still keep reaching out for each other in the form of words, no matter how bad things become, is part of the process of hope and reclamation. And I've definitely found, especially with this latest book, that is tough as some of the things have been to face, that managing to find the words for them, managing to try and thread together even the most fragmented vision of what happened to me, it is a way of trying to access hope, is a way of coming out the other end, trying to find that thread back out of the darkness. And
the book you're referring to, is I'm pretty sure it is, isn't it? Is your latest poetry collection, The Girls in the Red House, Are Singing? Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah, and some, a lot of that book is really about kind of reclaiming those girls, parts of me that I had, left behind that had been the most damaged, and trying to bring them out the other side, and like you say, bring them back to the real world, and hopefully creating a safe place for them. And I think, in exploring what I have with that book, I inevitably was exploring, experiences that so many women go through.
Absolutely.
There's not many female lives that are untouched by some form of, violence, especially sexual violence, and and it's the hardest thing I found to speak of, and the pressure, the cultural pressures to not speak, to not vocalize, not face, not avow.
To completely internalise it, usually, isn't it?
Yeah,
and minimise
exactly.
it. Internalise and minimise.
Yes. Yeah, entirely. And I think that's just the most dangerous thing, and the thing that allows so much of it to continue is there's still so much darkness and silence, shrouding those experiences which are so incredibly common and which do bind us together. And so there's a lot of feminist drive, obviously, in that side of my writing. I really feel that as women we still need to be telling those stories that that bind us together, that in a hope of making a change. I'm not naive that writing can have a massive political impact, but I think it is a political step to voice those personal things as well. And I know for myself, reading and hearing other women's stories has been hugely sustaining and really life altering in terms of my own kind of quest to figure out what was going on, particularly with my body. A lot of the motivation for that latest book was trying to figure out the story of my own chronic pain and why I had been left with a body that was in kind of perpetual red-lined, nervous system reactions, and that was leading to chronic pain. And reading other women, trying to make sense of that kind of trauma response that caused pain in their lives was a huge factor in inspiring me to go ahead and kind of use my writing craft to try and figure that out.
Oh, well done, Tracey. Bravo. Now I'm going to end. I'm going to circle back to the editing because, of course, you can absolutely call yourself a writer. Because I'm referring back now to the first time that you sort of came to my attention as a brilliant up and coming writer 20 years ago, when you won the Bank of New Zealand Catherine Mansfield Award, judged by the lovely late Vincent O'Sullivan, with a powerful story of which I still have got a hard copy of and keep in the kind of craft of writing file that I've got at home, and it's called Wheat. And I mentioned it to you off air before we did the interview because it actually has a little segment in it about editing. So I'm just going to read it out because it kind of gives I hope people courage to listen to and stick to their own voice. So I won't give away too much of the story, but basically it's a woman who's attending a writing class to try and write out quite a very traumatic incident in her life. And so just near the end of the story, this is what you've written. the autobiography teacher tells me that I must cut, I must edit, and he gives me a story to use as a model. This is death, he says. Death comes with no adjectives. But I tell him that the policeman came back with an envelope of hair, but it was dead hair. I don't want my writing to be like that here. I want to find a language that moves on the page like he did. And then the teacher says, a monument's not a soft thing, it needs to be hard. And then he goes on that you can't bury a child in a tomb of metaphors, etc., etc. And you have the last word by telling the readers, I don't go back to class. So, so you do, in that, I think you're setting the seeds of how your writing is, going to continue on, is that you are going to do it your way and in your style. So, congratulations on that, Tracey.
Oh, thank you so much. I was so struck when you drew the connection between my editing workshop and that story, and it seems incredible that I hadn't drawn that link myself, especially because the metaphor of hair in that story is so intensely present, and I had used that quote about untangling the hair of someone you love.
Yeah, so, of course. Wow, I've just made that link now myself. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm incredibly grateful to you for being a reader for that long and kind of making conscious that link for me. Someone actually at the at that seminar rushed up to me afterwards and said, "Oh, please write an article, based on your speech, because I really would love, to have it in print." And I kind of had thought about maybe doing that, and that would be a kind of an obvious.
That might be your way into it. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, absolute pleasure. I'm sure our listeners have got as much out of this interview as I have, and we look forward to, just keeping on reading what you produce in the future. So thank you so much, Tracey.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been really, it's been an amazing conversation. So I'm really grateful to you for inviting me here.
And if you want to check out more of Tracey's work, I'd suggest either of her short story collections, which are called Deleted Scenes for Lovers, or the other one, The Devil's Trumpet. But if poetry's more your thing, then try her collection, which is called Conventional Weapons. And I'd suggest you read those before girding your loins for her latest collection, which has just recently come out and which we referred to in the interview, which is The Girls in the Red House Are Singing. Right, let's play a track now in acknowledgement of the recent passing of one of the great narrative singer-songwriters, the legendary Chris Christopherson. And I've chosen one of his lesser-known tracks simply because I believe that his best-known songs have been so well covered by other people, Johnny Cash, Janis Joplin, etc. So here is The Silver-Tongued Devil, because it always reminds me of my first boyfriend. Hey, Daryl. And it also, because I think thematically it just fits in of much of what Tracey and I were talking about in her interview. So here it is, The Silver-Tongued Devil. You're listening to Right On with me, Beverly Martens. Now, I'm just going to share a few creative things that are happening here in Otipoti this month, and I hope ones that I hope that some listeners will be able to get along to. Firstly, the utterly charming exhibition Wind Between the Pages by David Elliott, which is on now at the main library here in town, up on the 3rd floor, and it's on till the 27th of October. So if you can make time for it, do pop along. It's something that you can do in your lunch hour. So David has created models and drawings out of books that he has loved and the imagined world that they contain. So they're 3D, these little models, and as I said, they are utterly charming. And as well as the kind of paying homage to books that he's loved, they also celebrate where he lives on the edge of our wild Otago coast out by Port Chalmers. And the Heritage Festival is on now, or this whole month, and you can catch some of some of David's other kind of events and happenings that he's involved in during the Heritage Festival that him and his wife Gillian have kindly put on. Some of them at the Port Chalmers Library. So if you want more details of everything about the Heritage Festival, because there are lots of events and pretty much something on somewhere every day, the diversity of what they've got covered is incredible, from historic walks, historic talks, access to historic buildings around town, etc., etc. Then check out the full program at southernheritage.org.nz. Now, my second notice is about Bookshop Day, which is on this Saturday, the 12th of October, and there are events nationwide at many of the independent bookshops, including, of course, our own lovely university bookshop, who are having something for the kids, seeing it's still the school holidays, which is a teddy bears sleepover. So that occurs both sort of Saturday afternoon through to Sunday morning, and will feature readings from local children's writers. So check out the bookshop's Facebook page for more details about that if you have a sort of a 2 to 7 year old that would just really adore being involved in that. And I'd also like to give another shout out to UBS for celebrating their 80th birthday in style over the last few weeks, and particularly last Sunday when they had a very convivial high tea at the bookshop, which was attended by lots of people, including past and present staff, and really was just a brilliant way of marking what a serious achievement having a bookshop running continually for the last 80 years has been. And of course, we wish them well for the future and continue to support them and their amazing team. And finally, something of practical use and upskilling to all local creatives, not just writers, because coming up next week is a sort of how-to workshop about writing funding applications. Never fun, not always successful, and I think we'd all appreciate some help, some practical help on how to do those dreaded funding applications, the necessary evil, and how to do them better. So the workshop is at the Petri Dish, which is at 8 Stafford Street. It's on Tuesday night, starting at 6 o'clock. It's free. I think you do need to sort of register your interest, but it's a free event, and it's hosted by the Aratoi team, the creative team at the DCC. So I would suggest that you look at, there's a couple of places I've found further information about them, either on the DCC Facebook page or the Startup Dunedin Facebook page, and both of those give you full details not only about that workshop, which, as I said, is next Tuesday, but also another one, the final sort of in the series of creative capability workshops that Creative New Zealand have been underwriting, and there's another one in December which is about kind of online, good online tools that creatives might find useful. So I would definitely urge you to attend either or both of those. And that's pretty much our show for this month. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much to Tracey Slaughter for her incredible insights and discussions about her own creative processes. And also, of course, thanks to UBS for their ongoing sponsorship of the show. Next month, I'm hoping to talk with another really well-known writer who we're fortunate enough to have living here in Dunedin, and that is Barbara Else, who has got a new short story collection coming out. So please tune in again then. Until then, though, thank you so much for listening. Keep reading and keep writing, and I'll talk to you again soon.
What do you want to be when you grow up? They say you are what you read, and the university bookshop can help you be whoever you want to be. Do you want to be an athlete? Then sit down with an inspiring sports biography. Do you fancy yourself as a detective? We have a grisly lineup of murder mysteries waiting just for you. Do you aspire to be the world's greatest chef? We have cookbooks to tantalise your taste buds. Do you want to celebrate your inner child? Play up in our fabulous children's room. The University Bookshop, helping you decide what you want to be when you grow up.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.